Welcome to Wednesday, the 10th day of January, 2024. Your day weather podcast brought to you by Hot Springs County Travel and Tourism, reminding you that as temperatures slide and snow falls at Thermopolis, you can always find yourself in hot weather. Everything is on schedule, folks. That look of that buffalo, I think, is going to sum things up for a lot of us here over the next 5 to 7 days, as we're going to have more winter over the next week than we've had all season across the West. This is going to bring high impact weather. We'll tell you what those impacts are going to be, but the biggest impacts are really going to be today through Monday. This will impact the whole nation, as we've been discussing, really coast to coast. A lot of winter weather will be impacting the nation. We've already seen that. We're going to see periods of mountain snow. The mountain snowpack is going to be getting a nice boost after a slow start. Now, we're going to see off and on snow on the plains, with the first surge of very cold air coming in on Thursday. Now, the snow on the plains will be of the light to moderate nature and kind of not, let's say, widespread, but in pockets, and it'll be enough for some light to moderate accumulations, but the accumulations are going to really vary depending on where you are. We need to be ready for sub-zero temperatures Friday through the weekend and at least through Monday. The spread south will be slow. Arctic air is very dense. As it gets very, very cold, the molecules in air get closer and closer and packed together. So the Arctic air stays close to the ground and has to get around the terrain. So it's kind of going to be not a big push of the cold air all at once, but rather kind of oozing in and getting pushed up the divide. Now, we've been talking about the Continental Divide, and the coldest air will be east of the divide. That's true, yes. However, we do think that it'll get enough of a push, the very cold air, to get over the hump and get on western areas of the divide by the middle to the end of the weekend. So they'll get into the act as well, and we'll show you how that will go. Dangerous livestock weather's coming. I'm going to show you the dangerous cold and the dangerous wind chills that will be associated with this Arctic shot as we get ourselves into the next several days. We're also watching the potential for overrunning snow, especially along the Interstate 80 corridor this weekend, stretching across Wyoming, Idaho, Utah, maybe into northern Colorado and western Nebraska, a narrow west-east strip of overrunning snow. That's something that we've got to watch because it could end up being a factor this weekend if everything comes together. Great shot of some lenticular clouds near Fort Laramie here earlier this week. The high winds aloft leading to those lenticular clouds here over the last couple of days. All right, 3 satellite images for you. Like we showed you yesterday, there's the storm in the Great Lakes affecting the Northeast, moving on out. And you can see other cloudiness coming into the Pacific Northwest. And we'll zoom in on that here in a moment. Like we showed you yesterday, a string of strong storms across the mid-latitudes from the Northeast to the Pacific Northwest, to north of Hawaii, up into the Aleutians and across the North Pacific. Just lots going on. If we were to focus into the Pacific Northwest, you see this nice curl here? Well, this is really the instigator that's really getting things going. This wave right here is going to be moving southeast, going right across the Pacific Northwest through the Intermountain West. And this is going to be the kind of weather system that's going to bring really good snow to the mountains of the central and northern Rockies and the Pacific Northwest. Just cold, moist air with a lot of wind aloft. That's just a recipe to really make it snow on the mountains. But part of this system will also produce colder weather and a bit of snow on the plains here as we get into tonight and Thursday, as we'll show you here in a moment. So here's a look at all the advisories for winter weather across the nation. Here's kind of the focus here over the next 24 to 36 hours coming into the Pacific Northwest as the storm exits the Northeast. For Wyoming, you can see the winter storm warnings in pink for the mountains of the West and the South, high wind warnings for the Southeast. We have winter weather advisories here in southwestern Wyoming, where this type of pattern, throwing a lot of Pacific, cold, moist Pacific air, does get southwestern Wyoming with snow along that I-80 corridor. And that's going to cause really an extended period of off and on snow in southwestern Wyoming over the next 4 to 5 days. Taking a look at the snow cover map, this is as of late yesterday. Snow spreading very much further across the U.S., and this map will really be changing as we go forward as the very cold air moves south and east. So here we are with a 500 millibar chart. Here's that low we showed you crashing into the Pacific Northwest. High pressures building up into Alaska, consolidating the Arctic air here in central and western areas of Canada. And then here you can see where the very cold air is right here by late this afternoon. So there's a consolidation of the bitter cold here stacked up against the Colorado Rockies up into the Northwest Territories. So notice if we go up here, you can see that the displacement or the placement of the very cold air is in western Canada, right along the east slopes of the Rockies. So once we have the right mechanism, that very cold air is going to stay right along the divide and has really nowhere to go but south. By tomorrow, we see that consolidation backed up against the Colorado Rockies to the Canadian Rockies of the very cold air. The cold air really begins to leak in tomorrow. This is what's part of the Pacific Northwest wave we just showed you on the satellite imagery. It comes right across the mountains onto the plains, and that's going to be producing some winter weather, bringing in some snow. This is the precipitation forecast through Friday, 5 p.m. So this is with that Pacific wave. So there's going to be a good shot of rain on the northwest coast and then snow into the mountains of Colorado and Wyoming back northwestward. And there's also going to be light to moderate snows getting pushed out across the plains. Snow again for eastern Nebraska and Iowa. You can see there's a bit of a downslope here for eastern Colorado initially. But to Wyoming, Montana, back into Idaho and Utah, the I-80 corridor across Utah and Nevada, going to get into winter weather. Northern California, going to get into some rain and snow in the mountains there. This is the snowfall forecast through 5 p.m. Mountain Time on Friday. So you'll see that the winter weather starts to spread across the plains as well as some significant snow in the high country. Then a very interesting pattern. The bitter cold air is backed up basically along the divide about like this by Saturday evening. This is by Saturday evening. We can see the expanse of the bitter cold stretches across a lot of geography here. And as we showed you yesterday, we have this little Pacific wave. It doesn't look like much, but this will bring warm, moist air up and over the divide right on top of the bitter cold stacked up across areas east of the mountains. This is that overrunning setup we showed you that we've got to watch. This is a time lapse going in 6-hour increments of what the bitter cold air coming in out of the Arctic south across the high plains and Rockies. And if you look at this period as we get into late Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, you can see the purple. The purple is showing where the temperature anomalies are more than 30 degrees or more below the 30-year average. And that's where the really, really cold air is, where you see the dark blue and the purples. That's where temperatures are going to go sub-zero. So you can see at first the divide holds it up, but by Saturday night into Sunday and into Monday, the purple gets west of the divide. Then you can see that the purple gets pushed out on into the plains, which means the Arctic air should relax maybe by Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. But don't rest on your laurels. It's possible the modeling here is too fast and the Arctic air may linger longer, and that Arctic air may very well come back right back into the region late next week. And that's something we'll have to talk about later. But this shows you the involvement of how that cold air comes in, sticks around for several days, and then moves away. So let's step through the coming days. Now, what I'm showing you are the forecasted temperatures at 11 a.m. on Friday. Take a look at those temperatures up in Alberta and British Columbia. Minus 40, minus 41, minus 49. That's without wind chill. But you can see we're starting to get sub-zero temperatures into the Bighorn Basin and along the east slopes of the Bighorns just north of Casper by 11 a.m. on Friday. Look at a little bit of a Chinook here in eastern Colorado and southeastern Wyoming and western Nebraska. So after a cold day tomorrow, there's a bit of a Chinook here along the Front Range. It's not much of one, but you can see a little bit of a hole here of warmer temperatures, but that's not going to last. So this is by around 11 a.m. on Friday. This is by Saturday morning, 5 a.m. So the push goes right across and gets hung up here on the east side of the Wind River Mountains, east here along the, we'll just say east of the Snowy Range, then down the Front Range of Colorado. So we're talking sub-zero temperatures to the Colorado-Wyoming border, spreading across the Dakotas and Nebraska by 5 a.m. Saturday. These are the wind chill values by Saturday morning. So you can see lots of minus 30s. Look at Montana. Look at North Dakota. Look at northern and northeastern Wyoming. This is dangerously cold wind chills. And you can see that it's, again, along and east of the divide where the real severe cold is. But it's cold for everybody. Even if you're not going to get into that Arctic air, at least initially, it's still going to be cold. Now, this is by Sunday morning. The cold air is getting deeper and stacked up right along the divide. We have sub-zero temperatures getting to the Oklahoma Panhandle. And if you're along and east of the divide, you're in the bitter cold. But we're starting to see that push into Sweetwater County and Carbon County here by sunrise Sunday just after. These are the Sunday morning wind chill values. Again, dangerously cold. Then by Monday morning, Craig, Colorado, into Steamboat, spilling all the way into Evanston, Mountain View, Green River, Rock Springs, into the Pinedale, Big Piney, Jackson Hole areas. That very, very cold air at first gets held up, but it does look like it's going to get pushed over later. Then by Monday morning, if we took a look at all of North America, the bitter cold extends from the Northwest Territories to the Gulf Coast. Freezing temperatures will go and spread across Texas. It will be interesting to see what happens there. And then look at the purple going into Chicago, going into St. Louis, going into Kansas City, spreading eastward into the Great Lakes. This is by 5 a.m. Monday. This is by 5 a.m. Tuesday. This will be making a lot of news as this bitter cold polar vortex spreads across the U.S. Then let's go back to this. This is by late Saturday afternoon, around 5 p.m. This system right here is going to throw moisture over the Arctic boundary. And we call this overrunning. We showed you yesterday, and you see this stretch of moisture right here is what we're watching very carefully that may develop this weekend. This would be very much an enhanced area of snowfall over the mountains, but across the plains as well. And notice the Interstate 80 corridor. Then getting overrunning into the I-25 corridor of Colorado as well. This could make a real mess for travel this weekend. But these overrunning boundaries, you have to be careful with them because they can be displaced easily north or they can be displaced easily south, depending on where the boundary and the collision of air masses takes place the most. So stay tuned. We'll continue to try to focus in on it, but this overrunning event is looking more and more likely, and it could be quite impactful. So imagine being 10 to 15 degrees below zero, but having air temperatures in the 30s and 40s from the Pacific going over and on top of that bitter cold air, and that generates really good snow production. And you can see that. This is the total snowfall through Monday. Very impressive. And across the nation through Monday morning, you can see more snows are coming across the Midwest, the Great Lakes, into the Northeast, then into our neck of the woods. Ice will be a problem. Could have some icing situations across central and northeast Texas into Arkansas, Louisiana. Then this boundary could go up along the East Coast into the metro areas later on. So we've got a lot to watch out for, lots to discuss. We'll update you tomorrow.